Should be on.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Spinner Rack. Hey, I'm here with my boy Petey. Say what's up, Petey.
What's going on?
Hey, this is not our typical shows, but we thought this was such an important thing, especially that it impacts the Caribbean nation that is close to our hearts here in the tri-state area. And we felt that we had to say something because we thought this was such a appalling, a horrible situation that occurred,
Yes.
and we just definitely want to send our prayers and support to the people of Haiti, and hopefully they can get through this thing. But we thought that we wanted to go a little bit deeper and look at what happened and who benefited from this assassination of President Jovenel Moïse, the president of Haiti, who's been there since I believe 2016. And so I'm here with my boy Petey. We're going to discuss some of the stuff. I'm going to give you a little background and continue from there. And then Petey will and I will discuss. So just a general background. President Moise assumed office in 2016. He won the election in 2015, but because of protests and issues with the ballot, he only got like around 33% of the ballots that cast, and even that was low because only 20% of the 11 million Haitians, and of course not all 11 million are going to vote, but a lot of them are younger. Actually, only 20% of the voting population actually voted for him. So a lot of the opposition felt that he was illegitimate. He wasn't a legitimate president, but finally he took office. When he took office, there was turbulent times with the opposition, and what ended up happening is that the opposition said that in February 2021 he was supposed to end his term in office, but he was like, "No, I didn't actually start till a year later, so I don't have to end my term in office until 2022." He dismissed his parliament, um, and basically runs the country by decree, by himself. He has a succession of prime ministers, and so that's basically where we leave off accordingly. There's been a lot of situations of what was going on with Moise, who were the people who were targeting him, who what happened. This is what we're going to talk a little bit about, and hopefully, if you find this interesting, feel free to join in. We encourage anybody who is interested in talking about it because we again, this is a crazy situation. A president was killed in his home by a group claiming to say they were DEA agents. After further investigation, you find out that many of the people who were behind it were Colombian mercenaries, former ex-soldiers, police who were hired to come to the country to initially under somebody named Sanson a bit. Petey, jump in whenever you feel I'm
Yeah.
off.
Well, I wonder before we get into definitely the assassination, can we talk about? I know you don't know about this a little more than I do about the actual gangs because a lot of times they talk about the gangs that were going on beforehand. So there's also talk of people of unrest of unruly gangs, but there are also some out of work police officers who've taken up guns and trying to defend against the more vicious gangs. Can you talk about how that came into play, just a little bit, if you can?
Unfortunately, this is a process of in countries such as Haiti, and it's not just typical to Haiti. You've seen it happen in other countries, and I'll say Jamaica. And I know Jamaicans are going to hate hearing that, but unfortunately, yeah, where gangs gain power through neighborhoods, they get support through politicians, and they're able to use this control of the neighborhood through criminal activities as well as support by politicians um, to either who either blindly don't go after them or who do go after or go after their rivals or give them the assent to do what they have to do. One of the things that happened here is that the Supreme the courts were not working properly in Haiti. No one's getting convicted. No one's getting being put to jail. I mean, not put to jail, but you know, being convicted and going to jail. It's this whole thing to break down into the institution of Haiti. But this has been going on for a while because Haiti is a poor country. It's had as long as being poor, it had a hurricane, it had an earthquake. But you have hundreds of thousands of people who've died, been displaced. I mean, a country like this, they always say it's the poorest country in the hemisphere. They always say this about every country that has a super disaster. The poorest country in the hemisphere. Country is a rich country in terms of the people and some of the resources that it has, but unfortunately, has been squandered. The political class has been a very fractious group of people who have always worked for one another or for the benefit of the whole country. There's a lot of different people and groups that are benefiting different things. So right now you have a situation where parts of Port-au-Prince, the capital, are basically been taken over by these gangs. These armed gangs. Again, like I said, some with political consent or at least the police or the politicians have not been going after them. And of course, this has caused insecurity. I think they said Doctors Without Borders said that at least 15,000 people of the UN have been displaced from their homes based on this type of stuff here. And, these gangs get young people, young men who don't have jobs, who see there's another way to make money and to bring something in, or provide some type of shelter for themselves against others. And again, this is not unique to Haiti. You've seen this in other countries. And again, I'm just throwing Jamaica just for an example, because you remember the whole Manly, the JLP, and National, where they used to have this issue there too. Or you just talk about Trench Town and stuff like that. Well, depending on what did they call it? They called it what area you were, depending on what politicians you dealt with and stuff like that. So you know this is not something, again, once here, but unfortunately it manifests in such a way that the poor people here suffer the most. You already have economy that's on the rocks. You already have infrastructure that's been damaged severely. You had the UN that came in there years ago to try to install some type of order, and then you had that whole cholera episode where people from the UN peacekeepers came in and they brought the disease there, and unfortunately, other scandals there. So Haiti basically has been on its own. A lot of people don't know. A lot of countries don't want to really get involved individually there, um, and so I mean, it's been pretty bad. So that's just a quick background on what's going on. So Jovenel Moïse was basically chosen by the former president to become president, and he won. And again, it's like I said, the mandate, he won with 20% of the 20% of the population voted, and he won with 33%. I think they were saying that he got like 600,000 votes out of all, or 700,000 votes, but he still won, and he was still the Democratic president of the country. And for all the
Well, they
shit.
were saying that towards the end he was ruling by decree. He was staying long. I think you might have mentioned that already, but he was ruling. He was ruling by decree. He stayed longer than he planned to. He was appointing people to sort of cover him, and then he also appointed what's it Henry? Is it Henry to take his place a day after his it was not he didn't plan his assassination, but the day after his when he was assassinated, he was someone he was supposed to leave office and have another person come in, but obviously to the people that came in, they didn't want that to come into play. But it's actually since he passed, they've kind of put that into play because Joseph was kind of covering for him. But I guess we have to get into the hard part of the actual assassination. I've been watching many multiple um, videos and news reports of hearing how we had this security group that are supposedly put together by Sanan, who's like supposed to be a doctor and this, that, and the other in Miami, but he's a Haitian American, and his plans and ideas of how he could help Haiti out. But then he's hooked up with these mercenaries that are put together from Florida, and then they gather this group of a couple of Haitian American, actual American citizens, and these Colombian mercenaries, and they go in there. And as we start to hear more and more, it seemed like it was early on a firefight, but ultimately when we get to Moise, they get to him, they take him out, and they exit. And upon exiting, that's when they start to go on the run. And when there's a blockade as far as their exit, they run, they separate. Some of them are captured, some of them are killed, and some of them run to the Taiwanese consulate where they tie people up. And that's what kind of gets lost because a lot of stories are coming out about the mercenaries and what they had to do to, basically put food on the table of taking these sort of rough jobs. But at the same time, it wasn't like knock on the consulate and say, please take us in. It was like go in there, tie these people up, even though these areas had diplomatic immunity, all that's out of the water once you like tying people up and like hiding out in people's consulates. So ultimately they caught, I think there's still a few people left,
I
but
think
then
I had 4 or 5 on the run and stuff like that. But I see what you're saying there. But I think that we have to look at it in terms of, I mean, I'm not saying, hey, this is good or this is bad. I'm saying we have to look at it in terms of when you're being chased by people, you're going to be doing certain things. They didn't kill anybody. I mean, those. My assumption is some of them didn't. The vast majority were not involved in the whole assassination plot. And so this is one of the things we're talking about right now. The Haitian police have been able to roll up some of some of the people who they believe were involved in the assassination and stuff like that. And one of the people that they're talking about is this guy named Sanan. He's a doctor, or is a doctor from Haiti, and he came to the United States. He's actually, I believe, an American citizen. Two of the people that they found involved that were captured in Haiti, along with the Colombian mercenaries, were Haitian Americans. You know, um,
Mhm.
we did have the head of security from Jovenel Moïse's his head of security made several trips to Colombia. No one knows why, what was going on, and we also know that there's a thing where they have one politician where who was head of, I think, the corruption investigation, and was um, he was and he supposedly did not like the president or something like that, or he had some grudge, and he was the one who gave the order to the mercenaries to kill a select group of mercenaries. So not all of them were involved in the actual murder, but a select group, and the number seems to vary. They say around seven knew about the plot to kill him. But we're not sure what's going on there. Peter, you want to comment on that?
Sorry, say that again. I was just looking at some.
Yeah, I said that we know that some of them were um, we know that some of them were we're not sure how many. They're saying seven. Some people say seven. I've heard some people say five, who were involved in the actual plot to actually kill the president and shoot his wife. So
That's kind of where it gets murky
yes,
because it's kind of you hear this sort of thing of sort of humanizing a portion of these mercenaries who are, they are mercenaries. They are take on tough jobs, but they say at some point the idea was to obviously seemingly do a coup, go in there and then take over and put in place Sanan or whoever else they had in mind. But the idea would probably be Sanan would come in place and they would take him out for whatever he did wrong, whatever they perceived him doing wrong.
right,
Obviously, since they went in as DEA, they felt they were going in for as far as drugs, but at the same time, at some point it shifted, and that's what the idea that people going at. Some people didn't know it shifted, and then next thing you know, they exited after he was died. Or maybe the idea is that they were on the outside, and then they didn't know that he was killed, and they were just doing their job, and the next thing you know, they're on the run. Now, I think they have some tapes, or they have something of Moise's, calling for his guard, where he's hearing gunfire, and he's like, something's going on out there, and that calling for his guards to come, just come check it out. And then a little while after that, he calls back and says, come, someone come and say, to save my life, and nobody comes to his aid. And that's where it gets great because if there was a firefight or something beforehand, or something where he could have an idea that they were in the area, that would lead into question, when do these guys say what's going on? But I mean, as soldiers, your job is to just follow through, and your job is not really to question anything. So it's kind of hard to, like, any person that we would put in for a job. I mean, it's when we look at I don't know, to use an example being like like Crimson Tide, where you get the order and you're like, we have to follow the order, and the person who goes against the order, that's strange. Like, that is out of the ordinary
right.
because
Because soldiers are taught to. You're right, 100%
yeah.
right. Chain of
So
command, straight
yep,
down.
yeah. So it's like that's where, I mean, it's tougher because you have this thing where I don't want to be that hard edge, but you have to look at it and say, as at this point now, we don't know where the plot came from. Adding all this other story and all this other sort of you know humanizing element to the struggle of saying they're making 790 a month on pension, and that's not enough to take care of their families and this, that, and the other. That's not enough to sort of say, why this was happening, why would you say yes to everything at some point, or just say, tell us what the or maybe they have been telling it the Haitian police or Haitian the interrogators what everything that's going on, but at the same time, then it's saying who's the person here, who's the people who do. That's what needs to happen. So I mean, I've been much harder edge on it because it's you know it's a pass it's passing, and I'm also saying as these crimes go on, you just have to take out everyone. Now that I think they've gotten three of the Haitian police in jail, so it's like it's going to start mounting up because you have that many people coming in there. It's going to be unless you make a deal, everybody has to go down.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up. So let's just start off at the beginning. So we have these guys coming into the country, right? They're
Yes,
coming into the country. I mean, not country. They got into the country. Some of them acted as bodyguards for Sanan, right? Uh,
yes,
some of them also. So they weren't. A lot of them, according to their family members, they weren't acting as if they were hiding or they're trying to do something illegal. They were taking pictures. They were on social media. They were communicating with the families. You know, they figured they were just doing. A lot of them figured they were just doing basic bodyguarding work. So we got that, right? Do we all agree on that? Number two, they didn't take that. Some of them are told that, hey, we're going to be doing we're trying to capture this guy. He's a bad guy or whatever.
yes,
And this is another particular thing we're doing. A lot of the revelations we're finding out too are not coming from the Haitian government or the police,
yes,
coming from the Colombian government, because the Colombian government, these are the ex-soldiers. People are like, hey, why aren't you tracking them? Haitians, Colombian soldiers have been trained by the United States. I'm going to say that right now because they were having the insurgency against the FARC, which is a rebel group in Colombia, and there's the ELN, and also against the drug dealers out there, that were there previously from Carlos Escobar, the Rastreros, um, the Urbanos now, some other gangs. So they're trained in terms of other countries. They're and they're lanceros. That's like their special forces guys. They're considered pretty good. Now, in terms of relative worth, in terms of value, they don't get paid anywhere near as the Americans. Americans get paid 50 to 70% more who act as mercenaries. Well, because they're Latinos, they don't get as much. So that's an issue in and of itself. But we're not going into that particular issue. But so around the world, the Colombian mercenaries have been considered pretty good. Well trained, disciplined. They've been in wars like in Yemen. They were there working for the UAE. They've been in other hotspots around the world. From guarding pipelines, people, involved in different operations. So right now, these guys generally are well trained. This particular group of people were in the military for a long time, and like PD said, they retired. They probably hit as hard as they want to go. Some of them retired and they were making like probably $400 to $800 a month, right? So here you get an offer for somebody to say, "Hey, come work for me." $2,700 a month is what I mean. $2,700 a month we're making. That's a tremendous amount of money. Whatever you're thinking, if you're making $30,000 a year, that comes up like let's say $2,500 a month. You're getting three times that amount, right, or more. So that's a tremendous change for people who are not getting that much. So these guys come in here, they go into the operation. That's where, again, like PD said, everything gets murky. We don't know the specifics. We know generally idea what the ones who've been talking to the Colombians or have been talking to the Haitian police and stuff, that what happened. So we know there's a small group who made the decision, or an individual that made the decision. The guy who they said was this guy named Joseph Felix Badio, right?
yes,
And
yes,
they said
yeah,
he was a former intelligence guy. He was involved, I guess, in corruption. He'd been in different places in the government, and they're looking for him. They can't find this guy right now. But supposedly he gave the order to some of the soldiers, a small group, that they were to assassinate the president. And supposedly what they're saying is three of them were told that this is what they wanted done. I don't know why these soldiers crossed over the line and said, yo, this is not what I signed up for. Or probably they were getting paid more. We don't know. This is where.
well, we have to. I just want to chime in that they're saying that one of the people in the team was a DEA confidential informant, and they've said in the different out of all of the multitude of news things, saying basically that's someone who's a criminal.
Right,
Obviously,
right.
so that's you can have one person, but that person probably I think is that the I'm not sure if that's the same person that was also in the Sean Penn thing, but one of the people that was in the Haitian relief that worked with in Sean Penn's program was one of the guys who was in this team. So it's like you go from relief to also being, and I'm actually, since it's a Haiti, obviously since it's probably one of the, the few Haitian Americans that is that, and I'm not sure if that's the same guy. So that's where it gets kind of murky, where you have these criminals hired in a criminal hired in a group of mercenaries that are also doing regular jobs that aren't criminal, and or the idea that they're going in thinking they're DEA when they weren't. So it's like that's where it gets kind of really tough for me, when you have this thing where you just say, I could just go to hire you and say, hey, we're going on this DEA job. It shouldn't be that simple, you
And this,
know.
I mean, and you shouldn't have, the DA doesn't have jurisdiction just to come into a country just like that.
Yes.
So that's, even in Colombia, they don't have jurisdiction. They work with others. Hey, watch the movie, watch the TV show Narcos if you want some more information. But generally, that's, you're working in partnership with with a group of people, and so with the government, the police, or whatever. But in this situation, so they're able to get access to the presidential home easily, and so and there's no fight by his presidential guy. So this is where comes in the second guy who was involved in he was the head of the security, and that's the guy who went who's gone missing also, and the one who made multiple trips to Colombia. You know, they're looking for this guy. So again, it's kind of weird that the head of security of the presidential of Haiti's president is nowhere to be found. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So now we got one dude who the according to the Colombian mercenaries, that one of the Colombian mercenaries who was supposedly involved in the murder, the assassination, that he was told and he's missing. Now we have the whole guy, the other guy. I can't remember his name. His name eludes me, but he's the head of he's the head of the, I guess, the security forces guarding the president, and can't be found at the moment. And again, this is a guy who went to Colombia on multiple occasions.
Oh, okay. I think I know who you're talking about. Oh man, because he was spotlighted a couple times. Man, it's one of these, having this sort of thing happen. It would lead me to ask some of the questions that I like.
But they do have them. I'm reading right now. They're saying the police hold president's palace security chief. Security chief. All right, so
So they
that's
got them.
yeah, they did. They do have him. I'm just trying to get his name.
That's hold on.
Uh, all right, so a guy named Dimitri Herrard. Herrard. Herrard.
You have that up. You got the con. You want to put up the picture?
So yeah, I'll show. I don't have a picture, but I have the article. I have an article here that you can take a look. This is coming from the New York Times about a week ago. Hold on, let me share screen. It's asking for change that. That one is not going to be good. Okay, here I got this one here. So this is from something called Insider, where they're talking about it. Share. Here in the article, it says the Haitian police have taken the assassinated president's security chief into custody. You know, Haiti's president, Jovenel Moïse, was assassinated at his private residence earlier this month. And that's a shock. I mean, where do you have a president being executed in his own place? I mean, when you've heard of coups around the world, usually that your own military, your own security forces that do it. But here, mercenaries able to walk into the gate of the presidential palace. Your security force does nothing. And they get into the office without anything happening, and then they're able to shoot you. That's a lot,
Mm-hmm.
So they took into custody the head of security in his private residence in Port-au-Prince. 18 Colombians have been captured. So sorry. So they don't give a lot of detail in this article, but that's what happened there. And of course, like, I got to also reemphasize they shot his wife. So those two guys, the head of security seems to be somehow involved. This other guy, semi-intelligence guy, Badio, somehow involved. And then we go to the a senator, a former senator, was also involved. In this. The police are looking for him. Yeah. So I guess, see, ex-senator among three new suspects after murder of Haitian president. This is from the Guardian here. The police are seeking a fired government official, a former opposition senator, and a convicted drug cocaine seller. So that's another one too. So there's a lot of things going on, like in terms of actually happened here, who's behind it. And so this is where, and I'll go on to my theory right now. We have Santa,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Santa is clearly, he felt he can go into, he had been talking about this for a while, telling everybody, hey, he can go, he can do a better job, he can take over the government. And so with the funding, we're going to go into the funding, that he can go into Haiti and then he could take over Haiti with just 28 mercenaries. Then all of a sudden, the Haitian people, he has no constitutional powers, no reason to be there, no
I'm
extrajudicial
sorry.
powers.
Excuse me.
Nobody
It's
claimed,
not.
hey, Sanson, we need you back. Nothing. And he figured that just coming in, he's
Yeah.
going to take over. I don't know if he had a deal with the national police, or he had a deal with gangs, or he had a deal with the people who run Haiti, the rich, or the legislature. There's no evidence of any of that yet, at least. And yet he felt he would be able to come in and become president. And this is,
Well,
I think, level of naivete is just a little too bananas. You know,
well, he seems to be the I guess the main
patsy.
media. Hmm?
Let's call him what he is, the patsy.
Well, to the main media, he seems like the guy. They're saying they found some DA hats and stuff like that in his house, and they're like, "We got him. That's it. Look, he's got DEA stuff here. Like he put it together, got some tickets. It has to be him. So and it's just like then they say. I think you had pointed out to me that they were still saying that they probably didn't have the money. He didn't have the money on his own to put this all together. So it's like, where would that money come from? But that would lead us to, and I'm going to try to coin this in the best way because I can see even the most far, far on the edge of conspiracies have looked at it. What part does the U.S. what part what accountability is on the U.S. that this happened at a company that's within U.S. soil? They put together this team. We've also trained these guys. We had all these elements of putting us, not fingering the U.S. as the actual shooter, but having all these pieces to this puzzle, like not just being a small part, but having big portions, but nothing to actually say that the U.S. sanctioned this hit. But having some of what part?
Well. I think we went overboard on this one, there, bro. I
I
told
knew
you
you
that
were going to let me go. I knew
we're
you were going
jumping,
to let me go.
we're jumping a whole bunch of levels. We haven't even connected the dots here, and you're jumping like all the way up. You know what I'm
Okay.
trying to say?
I'm just saying those are all the things in place. So if you want to keep going, but at some point we got to get to at what part is there any sort of accountability that needs to be on the
I mean,
United
this is
States?
what I'm trying to say. We Sanson, like you said, is the patsy. He's guilty of being involved in it. I'm not sure if he knew about the murder. If he is, he should be all like all those guys who are involved in the murder should be lined up and forget the trial. Just but then again, we want the trial because this guy probably knows something, and that's exactly what the people put him to. He's the cutout. Clearly, the head of security, the Senate guy, the disgruntled ex government employee, this who they have there. His name is Badio Dimitri, the guy who's head of security, and then you have the politician, the former senator. You know, possibly they're talking about some other dude who was involved in a failed coup attempt back in a decade ago, and then you also have a drug cocaine. It's a lot of people being in a conspiracy, and at least but not last but not least, they also say that the oligarchs, the people who run the money, who have the money in Haiti and control a lot of the businesses, that they were also in, but they've not been able to point to anyone specifically. So we go back to Sanson. How did he fund this? People are saying that he was broke. He didn't have money. They've shown a couple of people who have. We've seen articles and YouTubes and what's that YouTube channel we saw? What's the name?
Soul Flow
So
TV,
Flow's come
Soul
up with
Flow
it's done
TV.
a very good job connecting many of the dots. We don't necessarily agree with
You
all of them.
very
Very
detailed,
detailed.
and drawing conclusion. But can we bring in some of that stuff? Can we
You can,
bring
you
in the
can bring us,
drugs?
you can bring us back. So the problem here is that once we know Sanson is definite, but the question is who was involved in it, who funded it, who was the ultimate arbiter. These guys here, as we can see, there was a conspiracy within a conspiracy. You had a batch of Colombians. Most of the Colombians did not know what was going on, right? There was an inner circle who did know. Yet the same thing within um, the same thing within the whole um, um, the plan. Sanson was definitely involved. The question is to what degree was he involved, or was he just a patsy? And I think he was a patsy.
Cancer care can't wait. If you or someone you know has symptoms or has been diagnosed with
What we need to find out is who was behind, where's the money. And so the difference between me and Petey, and Petey will give you his idea of what it is my thought is that it's one of these groups. Either it's going to be the drug dealers, because there is a criminal element there in Haiti that does occur. There's a political element too, that the opposition hated his guts 100%, you know, and and also the business class. Now, I'm not saying everybody, I'm not even saying most of them, but I'm just saying there may have been someone who's willing to fund this situation. The 28 mercenaries, like I said, were going for $2,700 each. Most likely, there were more. Some others were going more, and whatever the firm was charging, let's say, was charging a lot more. So you're talking about a couple $100,000 for all these mercenaries to come in per month. They said, and then they had trucks and they had equipment. So you're talking about they're saying anywhere like under $1 million worth of to do this. Somebody had to have the money. Who had the money? Who raised the money? Was it done by the Haitian American businesses here, or was it done by businesses in Haiti? But it's interesting that you had a conspiracy that was occurring in the United States, planning. You were gathering mercenaries from Colombia. You were doing planning in the Dominican Republic. You're also doing it in Haiti. So it's all around.
And I want to, I know when we use, so people know, because every time you throw in the word conspiracy, we're not talking about the idea of some sort of nutty solution, saying basically what the government and the police and the courts talk about conspiracy, saying this person passed, all these elements have led to it, but we don't have a direct connection, but we have all these people in place that led to it. So they are part of the conspiracy. That's what takes down these big drug things, saying, hey, here's this amount of money, here's this amount of drugs that was released, and these people were involved, and these people died at the same time. We can draw all those connections. We just can't. We don't have anyone to directly finger the person. So basically, we're taking them down anyway because we're going in that route. Not the idea of talking about any sort of nutty idea. But if that's the case, the idea of, I mean, the hard part of even talking about a drug sort of back thing where I think the idea of Sanan in the idea of doing a coup would basically sell any resource that Haiti had to become a person of that. If if the flow of drugs through Haiti to Puerto Rico is the thing, it's something that we'll never sort of be able to tie down to sort of say this is it. Maybe there'll be a report on someone else that's a little has some more insight on that stuff, but it's kind of hard to even look at that because it's so there's no direct correlation, and it would color our whole look on the whole actual drug the whole drug war in general. So if we go to that route, the thing to remember is I would at least want the company that put these people in place to have to. If we're saying that most of these guys didn't know, then the company that put them in place, they're saying no, we set this up for DEA. We didn't set it up for any sort of thing like that. It's like if something goes wrong on your watch, you can't really. Somebody has to go down for this, and we can't just say, "Hey, we hide, we send them out. We can't. If they turn into a coup and or killing people, they were just supposed to be security. They were supposed to just be out there. So
So
they
here's the
didn't
thing.
have to roll.
Here's the thing, Petey, and probably you may know this a little bit more than me. So is the company saying, I think it's called CTU or something like that, the security company, are they saying that they knew that they were going after the arrest the president, or they're just saying they were going
No,
after someone else?
they're saying just doing security. They're not really. They're not even. I'm not even sure they're going to the actual going in there. They're just saying we set up security to go in there, but not sort of. And for like the well, that no, I think the Colombians were talking about as far as DEA. They were talking about that, but the company was just saying that they sort of just hired them. They weren't. They had nothing to do with the actual, assassination, or knew nothing about any sort of plot. So like washing our hands. But that's if something goes down on your watch and any sort of thing, you know, it's sort of it's a mar on your business because you should vet it. You should be able to look through it and say, well, what is this? What's going to happen in there? Can we get the? We need to know, a decent amount of information before we put these people out. Because if it is the case where the mercenaries are like, hey, we're doing this thing, we feel like they sound like they felt like they were doing some good. The ones they're talking about, then it should have been properly vetted before it happened. So, um, it's a tough, this is the thing because when we first started talking about it, Mars was very much, you know, like knee deep in all the information and sort of siphoning it off to me from time to time. And then, then I would chime in with my sort of crazy sort of ideas on it. And then he would chime in some more stuff. And then we would get to the, I not the hard part was when it was Joseph who took over after, you know, after Moise's being assassinated. So it was sort of like the international community is like, let's get someone else, not the person that Moise, the Ariel Henry, not let's not put him in there, and let's get elections. Everything that the international community wanted. So it's like not this person that would be like a puppet for Moise. Let's get someone else. So now they finally realize we have to sort of play kind of ball because I think they was also saying that the Haitian community was kind of looking to the U.S. to see what do you think, what do you guys think? Going to Biden and say, hey, what about this sort of thing? And then at some point they had to realize, this person has been assassinated. You can't just start to reform the whole country right away. So they actually say, they made the switch. What's it? Joseph stepped down, and then of course Ariel Henry is formally appointed Prime Minister of Haiti. So that had to happen, whether you don't like his appointment or not. The assassination and not the coup hasn't happened. It was an assassination, and the world, the world. No one is defending that, so you can't really defend something like that. So you got to follow through, and hopefully, because I think another news report pointed out that this is like two earthquakes. So you had the first earthquake that's still devastating Haiti, and then we have this.
And the
So
hurricane.
the hurricane, and then you have this, which would be the second thing to rock Haiti. And now the idea of do we do once again have the U.S. come in and try to help put things together and put things in place, that sort of thing. I'm in definitely a place of like not being the come in and fix everything type of deal, and trying to let well it's hard to be with all the people that they're sort of putting in jail. It's hard to it's easy for people to look at it and say, well, why don't we just go in and fix it, when it's not that easy. Where they at least try to get some people within the the in Haiti to fix it. So which is not
I
really
kind
quick.
of agree. I think that some people who are like, oh, send the troops in, they can fix it and stabilize the situation. Well, they did that. It didn't work. You know what I'm trying to say? We've done that in Afghanistan and Iraq. And, these things they're not intractable, but it has to be buy-in by the local population to some degree. They have to not only do it, they have to be involved in it. Their own sensibilities, their own desires, they have to be involved. And so I think that's the only way these things work. So, Petey, I want to ask you a couple of quick questions and give you your point of view on what you think. So, so we know basically the general outline of what the main players and what's going on. We know also that the DEA trained the police, the Colombians, or DEA, the military trained the police, the
The
police,
Colombian mercenaries.
Colombian mercenaries, and probably the DEA was involved in it. The question is, does that in and of itself make it that America is directly involved and tied with this particular incident?
In my eyes, I sort of felt that we had our hands in many different pots. Even if you have Haitian Americans, you have the Florida company, we have finances that we don't know who they are yet, and we have American, training these mercenaries to do different things, and then the Colombian, the Colombian officials talking about them feeling that this was a DEA sort of job. So it's feeling like if everything is an impression of America doing it, and then like, well, no, it's actually it could be duped. It could be some rich people in America. It could not be directly the government, but you know, then we also need to sort of look for that money for the people that are doing it. So I don't. It doesn't have to be the government. It could be some rich people that want some things in place to
Or
make
stop
this
something?
happen.
They
Yeah,
want to stop something that was coming through.
so that's ultimately I'm going. It's easy, and it's also not. I don't want to say the wrong term because this is a, like this. There's been some humor in this sort of thing, but it's not a humorous thing. It's just how it normally sort of talk about stuff. But you have to look at it as far as say, we can't say the government wanted to do this because it's, even if they kind of were okay at one point with Joseph being taken over and talking about no, have the elections happen now. They're just like, well, because things worked out, that sort of thing. It's like some things sometimes things regretfully change. In as far as someone ruling, we might not like it. We might not like Bloomberg going for a third term, but sometimes there's a shift in things. But ultimately, he was stepping down. He was and
Well, remember,
possibly.
the core group, that was the main powers, France, England, France, UK, and a
Hmm.
couple other countries ended up making the decision or helping to aid in the negotiations to have Claude Joseph resign and continue. I think he's going to be the foreign minister now, or I think he was before. And Ariel Henry will become the president. So they came together. Of course, the U.S. taking lead, to get them to make a decision. And you're right, you can't have a country where there's no leadership. And for them, you know, Claude Joseph was someone they knew because initially the UN and the US all say we're going to follow Claude Joseph. But the reality is that Ariel Henry was 2 days away from being inaugurated as new prime minister.
Yes, yes.
Well, you know, at the same time, the Senate nominated their own guy, the head of the Senate, to do it, which was the opposition. So
Mhm.
they had to make a decision. Theoretically, legislatively, you would have the head of the Senate take over. Just like in the United States, you have the president, the vice president, the Speaker of the House, and then the head of the Senate, the pro tempo, the president of the Senate.
It's
So he would take over. So that's what you would have. But because the opposition has been so much, I mean, there would be so much upheaval by him coming into the government of what Moïse Jovenel has been running. It was probably figured the least amount of the consistent amount of bumps they would have would be able to just get them together and do the stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to say that it's the American government because it's so hard to sort of do a coup as far as an outside country. You can put the pieces in place, but for us to come in, for the American government to come in and try to do a coup, unless they're going in to try to take over the whole thing, with the little bit of men that they had, was it like 28 people? That's really not enough. I think you had mentioned this out, not on camera, but like that's not enough to really. It's enough to sort of if you got the things in place to take out the president as they did, but not enough to put things in place and do all that stuff. So it looks like it's more of a sort of someone who decided they wanted him out, and they kind of it had enough money to do it. because it's not connecting to anything outside of inside the government yet. But it's these, but the hard part is at the same time the government hires these mercenaries to go with them into these other areas, and when they die, they're not accounted for in the deaths of Americans. Even if they're fighting with the American army, they're not counted because they could be from all these other places where we train different. Like they're even talking about recently, we can step out of Afghanistan, but at some point we could also start working again with Afghanistan against other nations that we have issue with. Say, hey, we can go to try to have you guys, help you guys out and train some people to do this other stuff for us. So that's where the government would come in place because they do so much, but we can't, it's nothing. There's no way to sort of figure out or finger the government in there because there's no accounting for it that we can see. So we have to say that someone with money that we haven't seen yet that could possibly be in the Florida area. That's a long way to answer your question. Yes.
I mean, I think that the question we always have to look at, two questions. I think when someone sent a text where they're saying follow the money. Yes, follow the money is one. And number two is who benefits. I always remember that from Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot, who benefits. And then from there, you start shaping your answer, because who benefits, you got to look at the enemies of his, you know, and who and what and why they would do such a thing. I mean, look, he was ruling by decree, so definitely a lot of people. He did not have a huge mandate. He had less than I think 600, less than 700,000 votes. He supposedly he was squeezing the oligarchs because Haiti wasn't making any money, as much money as it once did. Um, you had the opposition politicians hated him. They wanted to get rid of him. You know, and so you have that, and then you have the possibility of the drugs, going in. And I don't really want to bring it in because it may be nothing, but I'm just saying for the news. Like you said before, it may be in the news. So, all right, continuing. So, I mean, I
Well,
personally don't think the United States government had anything directly from the government. I mean, it's possibly had individuals who may have been involved, but I don't think there was any concerted effort to do it. Unfortunately, Biden has said, you know, years ago that if Haiti sank into the ocean, no one really would I'm paraphrasing now, would know or miss or whatever.
wait, saying say that again. Say that again. You were going pretty quick with that.
I
What
said
did Biden say?
there's a famous saying that he said that if Haiti sank into the ocean, nobody would know or something like that.
Hmm.
Just to show you, and unfortunately, that's a sad thing to say. I mean, Haiti's been through so much historically. It was the second nation in this hemisphere to gain its independence. It was ostracized by all the countries in the United States because it was a slave holding state and the slaves had freed themselves. And then you have France finally. I think the United States didn't make peace, didn't start relationships with Haiti until like 1862, and they gotten their freedom like over 50
Well,
years.
they were also talking about the heart. I mean, it hasn't been like the same way America was, whereas with independence, and then like not like Haiti's had to pay back a large debt
Yeah,
for
worth
their
about
independence.
$21 billion in our money now. So before
Yes.
any country beats the other country, and yet they still got to pay them back for what for their lost property, which is
Yeah.
nuts. The United States didn't have to do that when they had war bonds that they had to pay back. That Alexander Hamilton helped to set up, but you just have to pay back the debt. But 21 billion, it took 80 years to pay that off.
Lord.
80 years. So I mean it's just crazy. It's just a complete travesty of life. But going on to the money, I mean, there's just so much speculation as who it could be. You know, it may be a simple thing that somebody didn't like him, they took him out. You know, that's happened before in the past, but this just looks too closely connected. I think there's somebody in Haiti who probably knows everything that went on and how it happened.
Well, for them to get that far to take action and take this action and then start on on their exit, they run into a roadblock and then that's when these guys start going down. It's just like, I mean, it's not just even Sanan being like whoever is the people that had put it together, you know, a lot of these other people have to go down with it because they were they're following about following orders. That with we when we've seen other nations and these terrible things have happened, they've been like, well, this is if just I know either that or I get killed anyway. So it's I don't know. It's a we.
Well,
Well,
you can follow orders, but I mean, I think again, I keep making the distinction between the groups, people who knew and who didn't. I mean, you come into a foreign country with DA, you're gonna get hit with charges. I'm not denying that. You're gonna get hit charges because they don't have the authority to do that. They're not impersonating officers. That's another thing too. Three is just the fact of the matter is you have a small group who really know what's going on, or at least are following orders to assassinate the president. That's it. There's nothing else to say. Those three things tell you that there's something going on. I just hope, and these guys are going to be in jail for a little bit of time, no matter for some time.
yeah,
Their involvement is. But I think Colombia's also said that they're going to look out for their rights, and I think the people who actually pulled the trigger, I think two of them are dead. I don't think there's no coming back. If they make it through the year, I'll be surprised.
yeah. If that's a hard part because then everyone becomes a patsy at the same time. You don't want someone having a little bit of information to say, well, I can connect this person to Sanan and this person. Oh, we didn't hear about that. And the next thing you know, it opens up another can of worms that well, not as far everyone as far as the news, watching the news might want to hear, but not as far as the you know the world, the government kind of thing. Like, hey, wait a second, we don't want to hear all of that stuff. So it's a sad thing for Haiti where they didn't need to. I mean, a lot of times, I mean, I just keep thinking of and hearing a recent about in Venezuela having like them taking action and then of course that falling apart and having the same thing of people kind of talking about these people who kind of being exploited and they're feeling, oh, these guys exploited, they're doing these things, and it's just like, well, you can't just because we have a leader who we think is the right person, going against what the election said and just say, hey, we're going to throw some people in there to take action and take this thing back. And, it's hard to do it on other people's land. And if that's where, this all goes into speculation because it's saying if you look at the Venezuela thing, if you have a direct coup plan, everyone can get sold out and they can figure it out. Everyone gets paid off and then that gets swept. Whereas, well, hopefully,
Yeah,
but yeah, it could, leading where it's like, oh, we need to keep this close to the hip and saying we can't have this come out. We can't let anyone know what the real plan is so we can accomplish it. So that's speculation though.
I think that it's good speculation. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The only thing I wanted to make sense is that this conspiracy they had, if they paid all the soldiers the same, 2,700, which I doubt, there's probably more. That 28 soldiers comes up to about $75,000. Of course you double the amount because you have to get they're probably paying some people more. So let's say it's 150,000 for the salaries per month, and then you have the equipment they gotta buy. There's probably like another 100,000 from jeeps to guns and bullets and stuff like that. Because you're not gonna be able to walk on a plane with that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes sense that there's going to be a problem. There's no way Senate could think he was going to take over unless he had somebody in the police department who was going to back him, unless he had somebody in opposition who was going to back him. So this dude is like the biggest patsy around. Like, could this dude really have been running the show if he's telling everybody what he wants to do? You know what I'm trying to say? No, I don't think so. But overall, I mean, it's sad for the people of Haiti. I mean, here in the States, we have such a huge Haitian diaspora, and I guess they have some in France and in Europe and other parts of Europe and stuff like that. That them sending money back home was one of the big things that keep the economy floating. And we have to. It's just sad. I mean, what they really need is competent government. People in Haiti, competent government. I'm trying to say, and the battles between the political class. It's just horrible. I mean, there's just not much money coming around, and so one of the places to get it is through the government, through jobs, funding, all kinds of stuff.
Well, I will say, ultimately, I didn't expect to hear as much information that came out of it. That's why I was kind of, just like this is one of those things that's going to be swept under the rug. We're not going to know anything. It possibly sounds like it could be inside job. And we've gotten so much information so far. We obviously, we don't have the finger on exactly all the stuff, but a lot of key people we've been able to see in a very short amount of time, which
There's a
is
lot of media too. All
yeah,
the papers are talking about it.
yeah,
Washington Post, New York Times, Daily, the New York Post, the Guardian. Just name a few. A lot of TV stations, the Guardian, the ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Fox News, hell, Al Jazeera. So it's being covered pretty widely because it was such a heinous crime, killing
yes,
a man in his bed, you know, in the night, and then shooting his wife to boot. So it's like it's not copacetic, not copacetic. So hey, Seth, Peter, so let's wrap this up. Is there anything you want to say or add before we
Again, I'm glad to hear that his wife has survived, and
yes.
it's like I know that people kind of thrown her into could she be a part of it, that sort of thing. But it's like them hustling her to Miami to get her the best help as possible. It's all you can really sort of ask for in a situation that lucky that she's alive and doesn't seems like, and she's been forthcoming and telling of what she knew and her thoughts on the situation. So it was a very sad to hear, despite whatever was a Jovenel Moïse was doing and what the international community didn't like. That's really not how you change regimes. We asked for elections, and yes, he was ruling by decree and this that and the other, but he was able to step down, and if we work through the process, we could no, well, not us, but Haiti could try to sort of fix this up, but then so yeah, I mean, I think that's hopefully they can come out of this, and it's going to take more than it's not going to be too quick, but hopefully in a couple of years they can hopefully try to figure this out and try to mend Haiti as best they can.
I know, because I mean, the reality is the people who are going to suffer, the poor people, as they always suffer, unfortunately. So hey, thank you for joining us, and we hope things get better for Haiti. Oh, one last thing I want to make is that please be public with the investigation. Please try to wrap it up as soon as possible. The longer you have, the longer people are going to believe what you have. This is what I'm saying to the Haitian. The more that you have a lot of loose threads, the more you need to grab everybody else. That's it, simple as that. Spin a rack.
Out.
Okay. Did you stop it? Because it still says live.
Hold on. Should have stopped.